Welcome back to another episode of Detonation. It's a really good episode because it's my good friend and the leader of the USTP. He's back, Gennady. Gennady, it's lovely to have you back as the chairman of the USTP. How are you, sir?
I am doing well, Steele. Thank you for having me back on Detonation. It has certainly been a busy campaign season, and overseeing all of the processes is most certainly a commitment that takes up a lot of my time, but I'm looking forward to the results. I'm looking forward to completing this campaign season on a high note.
Absolutely, and you're looking well and you're looking healthy. You're still running around Reno and down there in Nevada. I meant to say last night on the Haywire interview that the Biosphere Project is in Arizona, but I've been thinking about Nevada a lot because that's where you are, and I said Nevada, but that's something I really want to go and see. I want to go see the Biosphere Project. That's why it's on my mind. I think it looks like a fascinating place. But anyway, yeah. So how's your running going? You're running around.
Yes, indeed. So I have been running races or other longer runs on most weekends during this past weekend. In between my duties as chairman of the USTP, I ran in the Reno Mile. I set a personal record for a mile race at 6:39, and that day actually ended up being a 6+ mile running day. And then on the next day, I ran in a 5 mile race called the Journal Jog, which I ran in 38 minutes and 1 second. Also, a personal record for me in the 5 mile race distance.
Fantastic. Well, keep it up and keep hydrated. Because yes, exactly. It's a hot climate there, isn't it? I think so. Keep hydrated and you'll be okay. So we've got some debates to announce. I mean, we've got the clocks ticking down. We've got the third virtual debate, which we had Pavel Elan, party secretary. He came on and announced that, and we'll get into some more of that in a second. But you're here to announce, well, the third and the fourth debate. What's happening?
That is correct. So, because since the extension of the campaign season, we had tripled our candidate pool, it was no longer feasible to accommodate all of the candidates in a single debate segment. So, we made the determination to split up what would have been the final debate into two segments, the third and fourth virtual debate. The third debate will include candidates Rachel Haywire, Charles Holsopple, John Carrots, Kristan Harris, and also Kimberly Forsyth. So this is an interesting combination of candidates. I selected all of the combinations. The fourth virtual debate will have Yohanan Ben Zion, Jonathan Shatke, Vrillon, and Matt Taylor. And I want to give you a bit of insight into my rationale for selecting these combinations of candidates. Before the campaign season ends and the voting begins, I would like to see some new interactions among the candidates. Some of the candidates have appeared together in the debates, both formal debates and less formal interactions, more often than others. So I wanted to create some opportunities for candidates to interact in this debate format who haven't interacted in that format before. I also wanted to create some possibilities for substantial policy discussions, including disagreements on policy. So, for instance, I would imagine that Rachel Haywire and Kimberly Forsyth would have some very different views on policy. I would also imagine that Yohanan Ben Zion and Jonathan Shatke would have some very different views on policy. I wanted to make sure that each segment had at least one libertarian-leaning candidate. I wanted to make sure that each segment would have candidates who wouldn't just be fairly closely aligned with one another. So, as you know, Yohanan Ben-Zion and Kimberly Forsyth had announced essentially a unity ticket that they would each name the other as their running mate if they won. So it would not have made sense to put them in the same segment with one another. Rather, I wanted to have representation from that perspective on both segments. And we know that some of the other candidates also had some prior affinities with Rachel Haywire. I did not want to put Rachel Haywire just with all of the candidates who had previously supported her before they became their own autonomous candidates in the same segment, because then there would just be essentially points made that reinforce one another without the kinds of distinctions being made for our voters that would really inform them about which candidates most closely align with their preferences. So what I wanted to achieve with these two segments is to really motivate some thinking among our audience members so that they could look at these candidates' interactions in a new way. And if they were perhaps of a close opinion between two or three candidates, this would help them form their rank ordering of those candidates. As you know, during the election, our members will not just have the opportunity to vote for one candidate, they will be able to rank order the entire set of 9 candidates, plus none of the above, if they choose to include none of the above anywhere within their rankings.
Yeah, because the voting system is preferential voting system, right?
Yes, that's correct. So the way it would work is candidates would see a ballot, and on the rows of the ballot will be the names of all of the options, the 9 candidates plus none of the above. And in the columns, there will be essentially 1 through 10. And members will be able to assign the number 1 rank to their most favorite candidate, number 2 rank to their second most favorite candidate, and so forth. I would urge our members not to make the mistake of assigning the number 10 to their most favorite candidate, because that would not be the correct way of voting. Think of it as your first choice, second choice, third choice, and so forth.
Yeah, no, it's a really good system. And Pavel Elin and I were talking about democracy in general, and I was talking about how democracy is an efficient institution. It's much more peaceful and prosperous. Overall, there's lots and lots of efficiencies in there because it works from local issues up. And, this is the same within a small party like this, especially preferential voting and or representative democracy, which is essentially the same thing in this case, because, you have all of your options represented, not just your legitimate options represented, not just the next, like you say, the next worst, or the next worst idea, right?
Right. So the purpose of ranked preference voting is to eliminate the incentive for this heinous lesser evil mentality.
Lesser evil, sorry.
Sometimes people will engage in strategic voting because they think one particular option is likely to win, and they don't want that option to win, so they try to vote for the most powerful opponent of that option, even though they consider that opponent not to be ideal either. So that consideration makes no sense in the context of ranked preference voting, because one could still put the option that one dislikes most as one's last choice and put what one considers to be a less ideal, but more, a less bad, but also not ideal option somewhere in the middle of that preference ranking. And then as their number 1 choice, indicate the option that one actually considers to be the best option, irrespective of how much support that option might have, how one thinks others would vote in regard to that option. So I would really encourage our members to vote their conscience, whatever candidate they think is the best, whatever candidate's policies they like the most, whatever candidate's debate performance impresses them the most. That's the candidate they should vote for as their number one choice. And then they are encouraged to provide their entire preference ranking below that candidate as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, you know, we're looking forward to the third virtual debate. Are you looking forward to the third virtual debate? As you said, we've got a diversity of opinions and people on there. Kim, Harris, Haywire, and others. Carrots, I think. Are you looking forward to it? I mean, this is a great selection of people.
I think it could be quite a constructive and positive opportunity for the U.S. Transhumanist Party and for the candidates to show what they stand for, to show how their individual candidate platforms, their approaches, would contribute both to advancing transhumanism and to distinguishing transhumanist politics from mainstream politics. Are encouraged in both debates to focus on policy, to focus on how they can bring positive, constructive change, to focus on rational arguments, and of course to make for a vigorous discussion, an intelligent discussion, where if they disagree, they can express their disagreements. But disagreements have to be high-minded as well. So when they disagree, they should give reasons why they disagree. And those reasons should be based in logic and evidence rather than personal attacks. I reject this tone of essentially appealing to the lowest common denominator that often exists in mainstream politics, this reality show sense that mainstream politics has about it, especially in the United States with the two-party system, with the tribal mentality, the mentality of my team versus your team, which often infects both the Democratic and the Republican parties. But let us hope that the transhumanist candidates can do better. The addition of new candidates into this race was also intended to alter the dynamic for the better, because I intended by opening up this call for new candidates to essentially break up the existing tribes, the tribes that had coalesced prior to that time, and were essentially engaging in social media flame wars. And my thinking was, by allowing new candidates to enter the race, I could break that narrative of this one tribe versus this other tribe. I could break or diffuse some of that polarization and have people consider a variety of options, and also have members who had been disengaged before perhaps become re-engaged because they saw more choices. And that's not a critique of the candidates who had been running since April. Rather, it is merely a statement that when people form these kinds of tribal allegiances, especially during a time of heated controversy, they get locked into adversarial mindsets, which are detrimental. So introducing some new variables into the equation could change the outputs of that equation in a more positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think there'll be any surprise upsets? For example, Virillion and Matt Taylor are yet to sort of been heard from. That doesn't mean they're out of the race. That doesn't mean they don't have a chance. Do you think there might be a surprise upset in the fact that these people might really shine through with some sort of message that really resonates with voters?
I look forward to hearing what they have to say. And I'm sure a lot of our other members do as well, based on their answers to the candidate profile questions, which I encourage everyone to look up at the Transhumanist Party website, transhumanist-party.org, those answers were thoughtful. They were intelligent. They offered perspectives that other candidates had not offered. So these individuals are creative thinkers. They have solutions to a lot of the contemporary social problems that at the very least deserve some consideration. And so I hope that they do shine through. I hope they give our members something to think about. That's the goal with every candidate, really, to have their ideas and the way they express those ideas contribute positively of tools available to us and a variety of approaches available to us to solve the pressing problems of our era.
And this is a lesson for candidates who have more of a media stage presence than these other lesser candidates. Don't scare these guys away with silly attack verticals, because you don't know what's happening in people's private lives, and although they might be a bit quiet on this round, next time they might come back very strong, and you might upset a lion. So that's just a little side note for louder candidates. You don't know what the future holds. You never know what the future holds. So don't write people off immediately. But it's very interesting, none to say the less. You mentioned a whole bunch of stuff about policy and all this sort of stuff. What would you like to hear from the candidates, especially, anything to talk about technologies, anything like that, and the tone of the debate, and how they would like to conduct themselves, how they should conduct themselves?
Yes. So first of all, with regard to the subjects of the debate, we are currently in the process of crowdsourcing questions from our members, and we already have a few questions posted to various Facebook threads, but we are definitely going to be actively soliciting more member questions in the coming days. Essentially, if anybody would like to contribute a question, feel free to go to the Transhumanist Party Facebook group or the U.S. Transhumanist Party Facebook page or wherever the debate announcement is posted and post your question. You could even post your question in the comments of this episode on YouTube, and I will check them periodically and select what I consider to be the best, most readily generalizable, most relevant questions to a broader audience. So this debate format, unlike the others, is going to be a lot more focused on substance, not on candidates being against one another in some way or critiquing one another, unless they want to say, as part of their own positive answers, that those solutions have certain advantages over the solutions put forward by the other candidates. But this debate is going to be very much policy-oriented, both in the third virtual debate segment and in the fourth virtual debate segment. We want to see how the candidates each stand out in terms of their policy ideas in response to the questions and concerns posed by our members. So you had asked regarding the tone of the debate, and this is the tone that I would like to see. Focused on ideas, focused on substance, focused on reasoning behind those ideas. Hopefully each candidate will strive to ground his or her position in the facts and in both inductive and deductive logic as applied to those facts. And furthermore, I urge all the candidates to act respectfully toward the other candidates. It is quite possible to disagree respectfully. It is quite possible to still portray oneself as the best choice, but to do so with respect to the other candidates. I would hope that the candidates avoid gratuitous insults. I would hope that they avoid essentially the kind of tactics of attrition that are often observed in mainstream politics, where if you have a contested Republican primary or a contested Democratic primary, the candidates will often hurl a lot of vitriol at one another. And somehow at the end, when a nominee is selected, they're supposed to magically reconcile and forget all of the terrible things that were said, and the obstructionism, the backstabbing, the brutal and often unfair attacks that get hurled during the primary season. But in reality, a lot of bridges get burned with that kind of approach. And if the goal is ultimately unity behind the candidate who wins, and I believe that should be the goal, then every candidate needs to be a bridge builder. And every candidate needs to act in the spirit of that unity right now, as well as during the debates, because that's the best way to credibly unite the party afterward. I like to say the best way to convey credibility about doing something is to actually do it, and to do it right now.
Yeah, that should be mandatory viewing for all the candidates. Absolutely, that's really good. Yeah, so so you're crowdsourcing some of these questions, you're generating some of these questions. The questions are going to be really cool. We're going to have a great show here on both the debate days. I'm sure we can get that. We're going to have Lev and Jules, hopefully, Peter Zing, Victoria Yustamenkov, all the candidates. Hopefully yourself and Pavel to come in, drop in, and say hello before we rock into this debate. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And this whole experience, Gennady, thank you very much, because we're learning a lot. Everybody in here is learning a lot, and you've assumed leadership from this, but Zoltan Eastland ultimately has to be praised in his genius in setting these wheels into motion. And allowing and finding a mechanism of generating so much free labor, and it's something that's ultimately genius. It's a genius move. It's connecting people across the globe. It's stimulating positive debate and discussion about very serious issues. You can always find a scam when they tell you what to think, not how to think. And this sort of processes encourages free thought, right? Because it's from all spectrums of the political, sociological, and other. And that's what I really enjoy about this whole process is there's a wide variety of topics, there's a wide variety of debates, there's a wide variety of characters and attitudes and life circumstances and situations, and they all sort of mesh in. And at times, that can be very hard to navigate. But at the end of the day, I mean, the learning curve, it's not exponential, but it's very good. And I appreciate that, a lot.
Yes, indeed. And from my point of view, this election season has certainly brought out a lot of these necessary conversations about the future of our society, about different flavors of transhumanism, different areas of technology and policy and how they intersect. We have really had some quite robust and vibrant discussions because so many people have been interested and engaged. And it's true, this process has not been without its controversies. But if people use these controversies as opportunities to focus on the substance and see how we as transhumanists can affect the larger political and societal landscape, then I think it will all be for the better. We just have to make sure that the worse impulses of human nature, because we're unfortunately all still human, don't overwhelm all of the productive gains and insights and the good conversations that have been transpiring.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll leave it there because I think that's a good note to go off. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Well, I wanted to remind our viewers when the debates are going to be.
Yes,
So the
please.
third virtual debate will be this Saturday, which is September 14th, 2019, at 5 p.m. U.S. Pacific time. And the second virtual debate will be on Tuesday, September 17th at 6:30 p.m. U.S. Pacific time. So we hope that members from all over the world will be able to watch these debates. They will be in the evening across the United States. They will be in the morning of the next day in Australia. So depending on where you are, it might be the start of your day, it might be the end of your day, it might be in the middle of the night, but still tune in and watch the debates, because I remind you, this is the first time in history that we have a competitive transhumanist presidential primary, where transhumanist candidates are actually debating one another. And the transhumanist community gets to decide which one of these candidates will be our spokesperson, essentially, at the national political stage in the US. Now, this election is open to allied members of the USTP as well. So wherever you are in the world, please join us at transhumanist-party.org/membership. You have up through September 21st, 2019, to register for membership in order to be eligible to vote in the electronic primary. Once that membership registration deadline elapses, we are going to set a quorum at 50% of the total membership population at that time. So 50% of the members as of that cutoff date will need to cast their ballots before we announce any of the results. And that is intended to make sure that the results are representative of the wider preferences of the transhumanist community, because we know that the entire world is watching. We know that history is watching. And ultimately, this election is going to be a watershed moment for the transhumanist movement with participation. No matter what candidate you support, we want you to vote. We're not telling you how to vote. We want you to understand the ranked preference system and rank order all of your options. We want you to study all of the candidates, look at their profiles, watch the debates, form your own informed opinion about which of these individuals you think would be our most effective representative. And please also suggest questions for the debate. Be involved with the Transhumanist Party in our other projects and initiatives. This election is important, but it's ultimately a means to a greater goal. The greater goal is the spread of transhumanist ideas so that we can actually achieve this next era of our civilization that we strive to inhabit.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm really sick of my Darwinian brain in a way. I want to go beyond it in some contexts. It's very slow. It's very you forget things. It's limited by scarcity. It's limited by death, whatever. It's slow. It's boring. I mean. It's time to start, unshackling from that and moving into a sort of a new paradigm. And I mean, this will help us get there. This will help us achieve those sort of ideas floating around the sphere, and that's really good. Scarcity is an absolute issue. It's a problem. It's not going away. The world is built on scarcity, but it can go away if we conceive it and if we consider it as an issue and something that could be defeated. And I think that's a notion that it's hard to contemplate, but through technology, it absolutely is possible. And it's kind of interesting also to think, you mentioned history is watching us. I mean, when you're living in history, it doesn't feel like that. But actually, it is it's something that will go down in the history books as at bare minimum an attempt and a footnote, or in another way, something that was absolutely fundamental to a rapid transitioning away from some of the issues and problems that plague society, and towards a future of, a more prosperous, well-endeared society that's beneficial to not only humanity but all species, and/or yet undiscovered realms that most probably lay beyond.
Yes, indeed. And certainly it's my hope that this is the beginning of that greater transition. Certainly, even 4 years ago, a process like this would have been inconceivable. We now have the numbers of individuals to participate in something that could be termed a representative election, whereas 4 years ago, the Transhumanist Party was essentially a fledgling organization, primarily and literally driven by one man, Zoltan Eastland on his immortality bus. But you were correct in your prior comments that he foresaw this kind of growth. He realized he would need to step aside in order for that growth to happen. But we have very much implemented a lot of his original visions for what the Transhumanist Party should be like. And he has had some advice for us about more effective outreach, but he has also stated to me that he strongly approves of the course that I had taken as chairman in terms of facilitating this election process, and even before that in terms of various initiatives that I had undertaken to unify the transhumanist movement.
Yeah, and it's inspired me to do some field research as well, because I'm in negotiation now with getting some interviews with some people in the city that I live, Melbourne, on why they shut down an AI research center, which was a $1 million pledge from the federal government, and then had $2 million additional dollars towards it, and then because of some sort of spat within one of our big parties here, the Liberal Party, they shut down all the funding. So I want to go and do that. I also am energized to go onto the street to ask people what they know and think about transhumanism. I think it's kind of a fun issue to ask people, because a lot of people today, they go on the street and it's Trump, Hillary, or it's I don't know what it is nowadays, but it's it's a lot of this attack journalism stuff, and I think actually a fun, engaging thing would be this. And I mean, you're going to get a lot of kooky answers and a lot of funny answers and a lot of serious answers, and I think that would be good. So I want to go out and participate in my own sort of adventure, and in that regard, I think that sounds really, really fun. But the possibilities are kind of endless when you start to open your mind up to creative thinking instead of just using generic terms like you have to be creative. I think it's there's a lot of possibility embedded into this. Thank you, Gennady, for your leadership, and we'll see you on Saturday. My Saturday, I think, or Sunday, my Sunday, or whatever it is, for the debate.
Yes, it will be your Sunday at 10 a.m., which will be my Saturday at 5 p.m. So hopefully we'll get a good audience, not just in the United States, but in Australia and all over the world.
Yeah, and there's an African caucus that's thinking about tuning in as well, and a bunch of Europeans definitely. So it's going to be incredibly interesting. So, we'll see what that happens, and I've got a lot of work to do to get that running, but we'll see you there, and so we'll see you then. Thank you very much, Gennady, for coming on this episode of Detonation, the special fourth debate announcement episode. You're always welcome to this platform, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Steele, and I greatly appreciate your agreement to co-host the debate.
No problem. All right. Detonation, all more coming to you all this week.